Section 11 of the American Rivals of Sherlock Holmes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by John Smith. The American Rivals of Sherlock Holmes. The Axton Letters by William McHarg and Edwin Balmer. Part 2. Why, what is it, Mr. Trant? The girl cried. This is so taken up with the wreck and the death of Lawler, the psychologist touched the last letter, that there is hardly any more mention of the mysterious man. But you said since Mr. Axton has come home he has twice appeared, and in your room. Miss Waldron, please give me the details of his first appearance, or visit, I should say, since no one really saw him, Mr. Trant, the girl replied, still watching the psychologist with wonder. I can't tell you much, I'm afraid. When Mr. Axton first came home, I asked him about the mysterious friend, and he put me off with a laugh and merely said he hadn't seen much of him since he last wrote. But even then I could see he wasn't so easy as he seemed. And it was only 2 days after that, or nights, for it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, that I was awakened by some sound which seemed to come from my dressing room. I turned on the light in my room and rang the servant's bell. The butler came almost at once, and, as he is not a courageous man, roused Mr. Axton before opening the door to my dressing room. They found no one there, and nothing taken or even disturbed, except my letters and my writing desk. Mr. Trant, my aunt, who has been taking care of me since my mother died, was aroused and came with the servants. She thought I must have imagined everything, but I discovered and showed Mr. Axton that it was his letters to me that had appeared to be the ones the man was searching for. I found that 2 of them had been taken and every other typewritten letter in my desk, and only those had been opened in an apparent search for more of his letters. I could see that this excited him exceedingly, though he tried to conceal it from me, and immediately afterwards he found that a window on the first floor had been forced. So some man had come in, as I said. Then last night, it was early this morning, Mr. Trant, but still very dark, a little before 5 o'clock. It was so damp, you know, that I had not opened the window in my bedroom, which is close to the bed, but had opened the window of my dressing room, and so left the door between open. It had been closed and locked before, so when I awoke I could see directly into my dressing room. Clearly, of course not at all clearly, but my writing desk is directly opposite my bedroom door, and in a sort of silhouette against my shaded desk light, which he was using, I could see his figure. A very vague, monstrous-looking figure, Mr. Trant. Its lower part seemed plain enough, but the upper part was a formless blotch. I confess at first that enough of my girl's fear for ghosts came to me to make me see him as a headless man, until I remembered how Howard had seen and described him, with a coat wrapped around his head. As soon as I was sure of this, I pressed the bell button again, and this time screamed, too, and switched on my light. But he slammed the door between us and escaped. He went through another window he had forced on the lower floor with a queer sort of dagger knife, which he had broken and left on the sill. And as soon as Howard saw this, he knew it was the same man, for it was then he ordered me not to interfere. He made off after him, and when he came back he told me he was sure it was the same man. This time, too, the man at your desk seemed rummaging for your correspondence with Mr. Axton? It seems so, Mr. Trant, but his letters were all merely personal, like these letters you have given me. Yes? Amazing. Trant leaped to his feet, with eyes flashing now with unrestrained fire, and took 2 or 3 rapid turns up and down the office. If I am to believe the obvious inference from these letters, Miss Waldron, coupled with what you have told me, I have not yet come across a case, an attempt at crime, more careful, more cold-blooded, and withal more surprising. A crime? An attempt at crime, Mr. Trot?" cried the white and startled girl. "So there was cause for my belief that something serious underlay these mysterious appearances?" "Cause?" Trot swung to face her. "Yes, Miss Waldron. Criminal cause. A crime so skilfully carried on, so assisted by unexpected circumstance, that that the very people against whom it is aimed, have not so much as suspected its existence." "Then you think Howard honestly believes the man still means nothing?" "The man never meant nothing, Miss Waldron. But it was only at first the plot was aimed against Howard Axton," Trot replied. "Now it is aimed solely at you." The girl grew paler. "How can you say that so surely, Mr. Trot?" Carl demanded. "Without investigation." "These letters are quite enough evidence for what I say, Mr. Carl," Trot returned. "Would you have come to me unless you had known that my training in the methods of psychology enabled me to see causes and motives in such a case as this which others, untrained, cannot see? You have nothing more to tell me which might be of assistance?" He faced the girl again, but turned back at once to Carl. "Let me tell you then, Mr. Carl, that I am about to make a very thorough investigation of this for you. Meanwhile, I repeat, a definite, daring crime was planned first, I believe, against Howard Axton and Miss Waldron. But now, I am practically certain it is aimed against Miss Waldron alone. But there cannot be in it the slightest danger of intentional personal hurt to her. So neither of you need to be uneasy while I am taking time to obtain full proof." "But, Mr. Trot," the girl interrupted, "are you not going to tell me? You must tell me what the criminal secret is that these letters have revealed to you." "You must wait, Miss Waldron," the psychologist answered kindly, with his hand on the doorknob, as though anxious for the interview to end. "What I could tell you now would only terrify you, and leave you perplexed how to act while you are waiting to hear from me. No, leave the letters, if you will, and the page from the Illustrated News," he said suddenly as the girl began gathering up her papers. "There's only one thing more. You said you expected an interruption here from Howard Axton, Mr. Carl. Is there still a good chance of his coming here, or must I go to see him?" "Miss Waldron telephoned to me in his presence, to take her to see you. Afterwards she left the house without his knowledge. As soon as he finds she is gone, he will look up your address, and I think you may expect him." "Very good. Then I must set to work at once." He shook hands with both of them, hurriedly, and almost forcing them out his door, closed it behind them, and strode back to his desk. He picked up immediately the second of the 4 letters which the girl had given him, read it through again, and crossed the corridor to the opposite office, which was that of a public stenographer. "Make a careful copy of that," he directed, "and bring it to me as soon as it is finished." A quarter of an hour later, when the copy had been brought him, he compared it carefully with the original. He put the copy in a drawer of the desk, and was apparently waiting with the 4 originals before him when he heard a knock on his door, and opening it, found that his visitor was again young Carl. "Miss Waldron did not wish to return home at once. She has gone to see a friend, so I came back," he explained, "thinking you might make a fuller statement of your suspicions to me than you would in Miss Waldron's presence." "Fuller in what respect, Mr. Carl?" The young man reddened. "I must tell you, though you already may have guessed, that before Miss Waldron inherited the estate and came to believe it her duty to do as she has done, there had been an understanding between us, Mr. Trot. She still has no friend to look to as she looks to me. So if you mean that you have discovered through those letters, though God knows how you can have done it, anything in Axton which shows him unfit to marry her, you must tell me." "As far as Axton's past goes," Trot replied, "His letters show him a man of high type, moral, if I may make a guess,"